Welcome to the University of Rio Grande for another edition of Safety Net, where our special guest today is Mr. Jason Holdren, the Gallia County Prosecutor. Stay tuned. Okay. Welcome to the University of Rio Grande for another edition of Safety Net. As always, we have Lieutenant Barry Call of the Gallia Post of the Ohio State Highway Patrol, the post commander, and a special guest today, Mr. Jason Holdren of the Gallia County Prosecutor's Office, where he is the prosecuting attorney for the county of Gallia County. As we always do, Barry, I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about what's going on with the State Highway Patrol statewide and in the Meigs Gallia County area.
Thank you, Chief. It's good to be back. Apologize I didn't make it last month. I had some other engagements I had to attend, but this year we finished strong in 2018. We still have a lot of work to do, and doing that through enforcement and education. And we talked about some driving in inclement weather tips. I think the last time I was here, what I want to touch on today is this winter has been a little different than in some in the past. We've instead of rain instead of snow and ice, we've gotten a lot of rain, and we've had to deal with a lot of high water issues in both in Gallia and Meigs County. And what I like to pass out to everybody is, make sure please do not drive into the high water. The high water is very unpredictable. It may look innocent, and you may think you'll be able to make through, but it's not worth the risk. So please, don't drive through the high water. Turn around, find other avenues or routes to get to your destination.
How did you guys, I know one fatal accident, with my time with the patrol and you being as post commander, you take every fatal crash personal, obviously, but how did you guys do as compared to other years in 2018?
Last year, in 2018, we had 12 fatality crashes, 6 in each county. With 14 people being killed. Our alcohol involvement in all of our fatality crashes were down considerably this year, which is positive because we were like 80% last year. This year, we're about 20%. So, and again, another positive thing is in our fatality crashes this year, our safety belts were the unrestrained in these crashes were down as well. The spike this year was motorcycle crashes. We had 33% of our fatalities this year, or in 2018, were involved in motorcycle. We had 3 commercial vehicles involved in fatality crashes this year. All 3 of those were left to center violations by the passenger car, not the commercial vehicle. So we've done some things to with ODOT. We partnered with ODOT in Meigs County and got some rumble strips installed on US 33 to hopefully prevent those types of crashes from happening, because we had 2 of those within about a 3-month period up there that took 4 lives. So we do partner with other agencies on items like that, but we do use enforcement action as well.
And I think we all agree one is too many, and I think your goal right now would be 0 for the year if that was possible. Goal. So, Jason Holdren, the Gallia County Prosecutor, we thank you for being here.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
If you could maybe just tell the people a little bit about yourself, your family,
sure,
where you're from, your education at law school. And
sure. So I am from the Crown City area, and my wife and 3 kids, we live on a farm. Whether you know it or not, Chief, we are chicken farmers. We have a number of animals on the farm, but that's something that my kids have really taken an interest in. But I went to school at Marshall University, got my undergraduate degree there in criminal justice, went on from there. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, didn't really have a desire to go to law school at that point, but a lawyer that was in town gave me some advice, and he said, if you're thinking about law school, go 1 semester and you'll know whether that's where you should be or not. And I fell in love with it, and I went to law school at Thomas Cooley Law School, that's in Lansing, Michigan. Then came back, opened up a practice, And here I am.
We talked earlier that a lot of your practice was in defense. Talk a little bit about that. As what sort of led you to, being a defense attorney, to taking the opposite view almost of being a prosecutor?
Sure. Yeah. So there's so many areas of the law: civil law, employment law, contract law, property law. But criminal law is the thing that interests me. And all through law school, that's where I was interested. When I got out of law school, started my own practice, took the West Virginia bar exam, so licensed in Ohio and in West Virginia, and I spent significant time in about 11 different counties, about 30-some courts doing criminal defense work. That led to an opportunity to be an assistant prosecutor in a couple counties. I was an assistant in Benton County, Ohio, where I was able to handle the other side, prosecuting cases, handling trials, and so I've done trial work on both sides, and that's what really led me to decide in 2016 that I wanted to run for office. So.
Was that run for office? Because I think a lot of people may not really probably fully comprehend that it is an elected position. You're elected by the people, which is quite humbling, I would imagine. But
it is.
Just sort of talk about that process a little bit. Was it what you thought it'd be, better, worse?
So, yeah. So when I did work in a lot of different counties, I was able to see firsthand how they handled, the opioid epidemic. The 90% of our cases are driven or fueled by an addiction of some sort, and so I was able to see how different counties were handling that and what they were doing well, and really started evaluating our county and saying, I've got 3 kids that are going to grow up here, and that we're going to raise our family here, and so my thought was we need to change some things, and so that's what led to filing a petition and spending all of 2016 campaigning. And you're right, it is very humbling, when the folks of Gallia County really give you a 4-year contract to say, we trust you to do this. That is very humbling. I don't take that lightly. And so we try every day to do the best thing that we can for the county and make the best decisions that we can as it relates to crime in our county.
And I'll let Barry chime in on this a little bit too, but just, I've got 41 years in law enforcement now, 33 with the Highway Patrol and 8 years here, and been through and seen a lot of prosecutors and, good and the bad. And, from what I've seen from you, I think the Gallia County citizen should be very proud as a law enforcement officer in this county and representing the university. I think your enthusiasm and your attacking of the opioids and just your drive is very commendable, and just like you said, it just seems to me you hit it on the nail on the head there when you said that you strive every day to live up to what the voters wanted you to do. And I personally want to thank you from the university aspect and from being a law enforcement officer, and I know Barry's probably got some input.
Well, I echo the same sentiments, Chief. It's been a pleasure to work with Mr. Holdren, his office, since the beginning of last year when he took office. His open door policy, he likes to be engaged in all the criminal cases. He wants to know what we have, what we need, or he offers assistance to us. He's like, hey, can we get this? Can we do that? So he's tasked with a very complicated position and job, but he has taken it and ran with it, and he has good staff with him. My guys love working with your staff, and they really it's nice to have a prosecutor who is engaged, and because it helps keep my guys engaged.
Sure. Well, one thing I would add is that since taking office, one of the things that we do, I've spent a lot of time at the post, spent a lot of time at the sheriff's office, spent a lot of time with different law enforcement officers, and so something that we try to do is we want in on the ground floor. We want to know if there's a big case. We want to talk through that. Not that we're wanting to take over a case, but it's law enforcement's job to investigate, but then it's my job to seal the deal and to take that to court and to get results. And so I think that gives me a spot at the table, and that's really what we've done is we've really tried to look at this. And with the background in criminal defense, I'm able to put that hat back on occasionally and say, I think we probably need to straighten this out a little bit, or maybe we need to question that witness. And so that has worked well for us. When our cases, when we can make our cases as good as possible on the front end, then we can indict cases with confidence and really avoid any significant plea deals because we're ready to go to trial when we indict those cases. And so that's one of the things that I've enjoyed with law enforcement, from Lieutenant Call to Sheriff Champlin to Chief Boyer to yourself, to Chief Davies, our ODNR officers. We've worked with all of them. We do have that open door policy. One of the things that I wanted to do when I took office is to really put a staff in place that we're always available. And so in my office, there are 4 full-time prosecutors. In prior administrations, there have been part-time prosecutors, and they've had other commitments, other law practices. And so my thought was, we've got full-time criminals, we've got full-time issues that need addressed, and so we need really full-time staff. So in addition to the criminal things, we also represent children's services. We also represent all the trustees in the county. We represent all elected officials. So we're called on by a lot of other entities besides law enforcement to give advice, give direction, review contracts, whatever it may be. And so with the staff that we've put in, we're able to do that quickly. We don't want to be the speed bump or the thing that stops or slows down progress. We want to keep things moving, so that's what we've tried to do.
Well, and I guess that's the thing I would brag on you the most is your engagement, is because, like I said, through 41 years, I've been a lot of places, and there's times you can't find the prosecutor. Maybe sometimes they don't want to be found, but
I've had days like that where I didn't want to be found.
You might not have been found, but you are always willing to and that's just something I know law enforcement appreciates, and I know I speak for all the chiefs and people in the county that we appreciate that, sir. I know it'd be hard to do it briefly, but to give its full justice, but just let people know what does a county, you touched on a little bit, and I think some of the things that you may touch on would surprise people, like you went to juvenile court and represent the township trustees and stuff, but generally, what is the functions of a county prosecutor?
Yeah, so every day, the great thing about my job is you don't know what you're going to get every day. You don't know if you're going to have a township issue. You don't know if you're going to have a juvenile issue. You don't know if there's going to be a traffic stop. And a lot of times, 2 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call. And a lot of times it's Lieutenant Call's guys saying, I've got somebody stopped, and how do you want to proceed? And so we talk through that. So the thing about my job is that there's really no normal day. Everything's a surprise. We just kind of roll with the punches. And so whatever that means. But we handle, just in my office, I have an assistant prosecutor that handles the felony docket. I have an assistant prosecutor that handles the juvenile docket. I have an assistant that handles the child support docket. A lot of people don't know that we are the legal counsel for the Child Support Enforcement Agency, for Children's Services, for those other entities that I've mentioned. And so, and then we get a lot of calls from people in the public that say, I need this or I need that, and we can't give legal advice to individuals in the public, but we try our best to steer them in the right direction. Something that we have done in our office, and really I think law enforcement has changed over the years. I think that the issues that we face now are not the issues that we faced 20 years ago. When we talk about the drug problem, we talk about it impacts families. It impacts not just the person that might be charged with a crime, but it impacts their kids. It impacts their spouse. It impacts so many different levels, and that's what we're seeing. And so something that we've done and what we try to do is really meet the need of the individual. And so if we have somebody that is committing crime, we have things, maybe it's because of an addiction and they commit a low-level felony. We have things in place like drug court, where it provides accountability. It provides them with the resources to get clean. I think we would all agree that we're all better when our community is better. And so we've seen a lot of success with that. We've seen a lot of people that come into the system, they're addicted, and leave the system with a relationship with their kids, a job, have been drug-free for years. So we see a lot of those successes, and really I would attribute a lot of that to Judge Margaret Evans. She's our common pleas judge, but when she was our municipal court judge, she started a drug court program there. Judge Mulford has continued that, and they've seen a lot of success. So no matter what court you find yourself in, there are avenues. There's really not an excuse to come to court and say, I've never had the chance to get clean, I've never had the chance to get help. That's not true. That's not true in Gallia County. That may be true in other counties, but we're doing a lot here in Gallia County. One other thing that we're doing, this has only been done in a handful of counties, is something called a rapid response team. If EMS is called out today to someone that's overdosed, within 24 hours there is a rapid response team that the sheriff's office is involved in, different community health organizations are involved in. They, within 24 hours, go to that home trying to find the person that overdosed to say, we're not here for a law enforcement purpose, but we're here to provide you with the resources to get drug-free. If you're ready to take that step, here's how you do it. Here's let me put that in your hand. And we have seen a number of referrals to treatment. We have seen people get into treatment because of that. And so there is that compassionate side that a lot of people don't see, but there's also a side of accountability. There is a side that if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to take that opportunity, we're going to do our best to send you to prison, because it's become clear to us that you're not wanting to change, and if you're not wanting to change, then we as a county have said, you can't be here committing crime, you can't be here breaking into homes, you can't be here just using drugs. We're either going to send you one place or another. So.
You probably just mentioned the high with the drug court and stuff, but in any job, police work, whatever, there's highs and lows. Sure. Probably outside of first responders, you probably are involved in the worst of people and the best of people. But I know you mentioned the drug court, which may be your high, but what, in the time you've been there, what do you consider the high good things about your job, sure, and then maybe some things that you weren't expecting that you just don't like?
Sure. We were faced with a case very early in my term, probably about April of 2017. And it was a case where we had a number of victims of a very serious crime that were juveniles. And we reached out to the Attorney General's office and said, listen, here's the case, here's what we need. And we've been able to work with them. They've provided funding that we now have a trauma-certified counselor that works for the county. Her name is Amy Sisson, and she works with our victims of crime, juveniles as well as adults. And that funding is all from Columbus. And so no cost to the county. We've been able to provide those resources. And really what we're seeing is, as our witnesses and as our, we try to get away from victims, but as our survivors are going to court to testify or face their accuser or move on with life, we're able to, while we are with them, equip them with what they need to get through that, to get through sitting in a courtroom and testifying about the person that's sitting 15 feet from them, to get through the 6th grade, to get through the next year, to get through whatever it might be that they're facing. And so that's probably the highlight of my 2 years, is to know that we have put something in place that is helping kids. I would just share that one of our victims of a very significant case collared a picture, and actually I got this for Christmas, she had blue for law enforcement, she had red for EMS, she had different collars, and they all meant something. And in the middle it said, I am safe.
Oh, that's great.
And so, to me, that says that we've succeeded in some
absolutely.
way. And so that's probably the highlight is what we're doing with those that are most vulnerable.
No, that's a great highlight. You can't do any better than that. Is there anything that's been disappointing? Probably a lot of things, the drug epidemic, and I'm sure there's other things, but has that been the most disappointing, that it's maybe worse than what you thought it was? Or?
Well, I always knew it was bad. I always knew it was an issue. Obviously, we like to see success. We like to see people turn the corner. But it's like anything else, from addiction to recovery is not a straight line. It's jagged. And so you have successes and you have failures. And we understand that, we get that. One of the things that gets me, and one of the things that we should really be talking about is the drugs that we're seeing now. It's not marijuana or cocaine, or it's a mixture. It's heroin, it's fentanyl, it's items that are laced with the normal drug. And so when we see folks that are in recovery for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and they relapse, they may go back to their drug of choice, thinking that they're getting heroin, thinking that they're getting something, and they're not. And we're seeing lives lost. We're seeing lives that are just taken at such a young age. And that's the biggest disappointment, is when you see success, when you see these people that we think have turned the corner, relapse, and we lose that battle.
No, that'd be just like we talked earlier about fatal crashes. I mean, you'd have to probably look at it the same way as, when we lose somebody in the county or the Highway Patrol does, that, that's somebody's mother, father,
Sure.
somebody, and then you probably, what you just described is the same feeling as
Sure.
of disappointment. And
Got a question from the audience here for you,
Okay.
Mr. Holdren.
All right.
Do TV and movie shows portray prosecuting attorneys fairly?
No. Something that I tell a jury, we just had a jury trial this past week, and one of the things that when you select a jury, you really want them to know that what you see on TV is not true. And on TV, we can have a crime, we can have an investigation, we can have a prosecution, we can have a sentence all in 1 hour, and you can go to bed knowing that the bad guy has been put away. And so really we are behind the 8 ball when it comes to expectations from jurors. They believe that there should be video of everything, there should be DNA, there should be fingerprints, there should be put stuff into this machine, and out the other end comes the smoking gun, and that's just not the way that it works. Our resources are not what they have in Hollywood. And so I spend a lot of time with jurors trying to get them to acknowledge that that's not real life, but also trying to get them to not hold me to the standard that Hollywood has set for me.
Well, I do the same thing when I get pressed or questions from victims of a crime that we're investigating. It's like, it's hard to explain to them that, watching on a 6-minute TV show, Law and Order, it's not real life. It's just
Right.
But,
That's absolutely true.
I get the same thing you do as well.
Good question from the audience. Good question.
well, another one came in, and I think I know the answer, but I believe they wanted to know how many years you are the attorney before you have to run for election. So basically it's 4, I believe.
4-year term, yes, and so all the prosecutors in Ohio are on the presidential cycle, so we're all going to be back up again in 2020.
And you're probably looking forward to that, aren't you?
You better believe it.
Well, I want to touch on one thing, and then I want to give you another question that came in. I want to give you 2 minutes or so to finish with that,
Sure.
because I'll let you think about that for a bit.
All right.
But and it's something I would have asked, and it's another great question: is what legacy would you like to leave the people of Gallia County? But I want to give you as much time as you want on that. But just real quick, is I don't think a lot of people realize how much you have to juggle as a prosecuting attorney. You've got the victims, you've got the suspects, you've got judges, appeals court, Supreme Court, defense attorneys, you've got state patrol, you've got city police, village police, sheriffs, all have their own personas and what they're driving for. And a lot of times, it's typically we're all on the same team, but you've got a lot, ODNR,
Sure.
university, probably when you ran, you probably never thought about the university much, maybe a little bit.
Sure.
I've probably given you a headache over it. But you just have to juggle a lot of multiple personalities and things.
I think the great part about all of those entities is that they all realize that we're human. They all realize that I'm one person. And so if I can't get to something right away, I try to tell people, I try to be honest. You know what, I was stuck in court, or I had this going on, I just couldn't get to that, but let me work on that, let me get back to you. And so, that's the part. I think everybody in the criminal justice side of things understands that. But you're right, you have to be a trial lawyer, you have to be an appellate attorney, you have to be somebody that can review contracts, you have to wear a lot of hats. Mm-hmm. And so that is why I have such a great team around me, and I've put these people in place for a reason, because they are strong in areas maybe I'm not. And so I think your first question, though, was really good. Something that we talked about, when you run for office, it's a family thing. It's your wife has to be on board, your kids have to be on board. You have to have a great team around you, and I was blessed to have that. But really, the thing for me is this: I want my kids to be proud of what I do, and it's important to get up every day and do the right thing, because they're watching me. I'm teaching them, whether I'm talking to them or not, they're watching. And so really, I don't really care about a legacy, but I want to do right by my kids, and I want to do right by the people that have put me in office and said, we trust you with this position. And so I want to every day make the right decision. I think if that happens, I think if that's the goal, then the legacy and all that thing it'll work itself out.
Well, that's a pretty good legacy. So I think what we talked about earlier is a lot of problems with families and kids. And when your kids can be so proud of you that you're doing a good job, and they know that dad's doing a good job, that's a pretty good legacy. Yeah. I think we would all agree. I thank you very much. You have been great. This has gone really fast. You have, I think, probably enlightened people that didn't really know a lot of maybe what they thought a prosecutor encompassed. And I think the biggest thing is it showed that you cared. And I think that's what people want, is when they elect somebody or somebody is in a public position, they just want to know that they care as much as they do. And I think that you have very well let people know that. And
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Right. Tune in next week. Goodbye.